Hi, we're reading Shōbōgenzō. I've just lost my page. There we are. We're on chapter 6. Soku shin butsu. Mind here and now is Buddha. That's right, yeah. What did we do yesterday? Oh yeah, Soku means here and now. Shin means mind. Zei means is. And butsu means Buddhas. So the principle of Soku shin butsu, or mind here and now is Buddha, is very famous in Buddhism. But many people have interpreted the principle to support the beliefs of naturalism. They say if our mind here and now is just Buddha, our conduct must always be right, and in that case we need not make any effort to understand or to realize Buddhism. However, this interpretation is a serious mistake. The principle of Soku shin butsu, mind here and now is Buddha, must be understood not from the standpoint of the intellect, but from the standpoint of practice. In other words, the principle does not mean belief in something spiritual called mind, but it affirms the time now and the place here as reality itself. This time and place must always be absolute and right, and so we can call them the truth or Buddha. In this chapter, Master Dōgen explained the meaning of Soku shin butsu, or mind here and now is Buddha. What every Buddha and every patriarch has maintained and relied upon without exception is just mind here and now is Buddha. Many students, however, misunderstand that mind here and now is Buddha did not exist in India, but was first heard in China. As a result, they do not recognize their mistake as a mistake. Because they do not recognize the mistake as a mistake, many fall down into non-Buddhism. When stupid people hear talk of mind here and now is Buddha, they interpret that ordinary beings' intellect and sense perception, which have never established the Bodhi mind, are just Buddha. This derives from never having met a true teacher. The reason I say that they become non-Buddhists is that there is a non-Buddhist idea in India called Seneca. There was a non-Buddhist in India called Seneca, whose viewpoint is expressed as follows. The great truth exists in our own body now, so we can easily recognize its situation. In other words, a spiritual intelligence distinguishes between pain and pleasure, naturally senses cold and warmth, and recognizes discomfort and irritation. The spiritual intelligence is neither restricted by myriad things nor connected with circumstances. Things come and go, and circumstances arise and pass, but the spiritual intelligence always remains, unchanging. The spiritual intelligence is always around, pervading all souls, common and sacred, without distinction. In its midst, illusory flowers in space exist for the time being, but when momentary insight has appeared and things have vanished and circumstances have disappeared, then the spiritual intelligence, the original essence, alone is clearly recognizable, peaceful, and eternal. Though the physical form may be broken, the spiritual intelligence departs unbroken, just as when a house burns down in a fire, the master of the house leaves. This perfectly clear and true spiritual presence is called the essence of perception and intelligence. It is also described as Buddha and called enlightenment. It includes both the subject and the object, and it permeates both delusion and enlightenment. So let the myriad dharmas and all circumstances be as they are. The spiritual intelligence does not coexist with circumstances, and it is not the same as things. It abides constantly through passing kalpas. We might also call the circumstances that exist in the present real, insofar as they derive from the existence of the spiritual intelligence, because they are conditions arising from the original essence. They are real things. Even so, they are not eternal, as the spiritual intelligence is, for they exist and then vanish. The spiritual intelligence is unrelated to brightness and darkness because it knows spiritually. We call this the spiritual intelligence, We also call it the true self. We call it the basis of awakening. We call it original essence, and we call it original substance. Someone who realizes the original essence is said to have returned to eternity and is called a great man who comes back to the truth. After this, he no longer wanders through the cycle of life and death. He experiences and enters the essential ocean, where there is neither appearance nor disappearance. There is no reality other than this. But as long as this essence has not emerged, the three worlds and the six states are said to arise in competition. This, then, is the view of the non-Buddhist Seneca. Master Etchu, National Master Daisho of the Great Kingdom of Tang, asks a monk, "From which direction have you come?" The monk says, "I've come from the south." The master says, "What good counsellors are there in the south?" The monk says, "Good counsellors are very numerous." The master says, "How do they teach people?" The monk says, "The good counsellors of that quarter teach students directly that mind here and now is Buddha. Buddha means consciousness itself. You now are fully endowed with the essence of seeing, hearing, awareness, and recognition. This essence is able to raise the eyebrows and to wink, to come and go, and to move and act. It pervades the body, so that when something touches the head knows it, and when something touches the foot knows it. Therefore it is called the true all-pervading intelligence. Apart from this, there is no Buddha at all. This body must appear and disappear, but the mental essence has never disappeared or appeared since the limitless past. The appearance and disappearance of the body is like a dragon changing its bones, a snake shedding its skin, or a person moving out of an old house. This body is inconstant. The essence is constant. What they teach in the South is, for the most part, like this." The master says, "If it is so, they are no different from the non-Buddhist Seneca. He said, 'In our body there is a single spiritual essence. The essence can recognize pain and irritation. When the body decays, the spirit departs. Just as when a house is burning, the master of the house departs. The house is inconstant. The master of the house is constant.'" When I examine people like this, they do not know the false from the true. How can they decide what is right? When I was on my travels, I often saw this kind. Recently, they are very popular. They gather assemblies of 300 or 500 people and, eyes gazing towards the heavens, they say, "This is the fundamental teaching of the South." They take the Platform Sutra and change it, mixing in folk stories and erasing its sacred meaning. They delude and disturb recent students. How could theirs be called the spoken teaching? How painful it is that our religion is being lost. If seeing, hearing, awareness, and the recognition could be equated with the Buddha nature, Vimalakirti would not have said, "The Dharma is transcendent over seeing, hearing, awareness, and recognition." When we use seeing, hearing, awareness, and recognition, it is only seeing, hearing, awareness, and recognition. It is not pursuit of the Dharma. That's the end of the quotes from the Master says. National Master Daisho is an excellent disciple of the eternal Buddha of Sokai. He is a good, great counsellor in heaven above and in the world, and in the human world. We should clarify the fundamental teaching set forth by the National Master and regard it as a criterion for learning in practice. Do not follow what you know to be the viewpoint of the non-Buddhist Seneca. Among those of recent generations who subsist as masters of mountains in the great kingdom of Sung, there may be no one like the National Master. From the ancient past, no counsellors to equal the National Master have ever manifested themselves in the world. Nevertheless, people of the world mistakenly think that even Rinzai and Tokozan might equal the national master. Only people who think like this are in great number. It is a pity that there are no teachers with clear eyes. This mind here and now is Buddha that the Buddhist patriarchs maintain and rely upon is not seen by non-Buddhists and people of the two vehicles, even in their dreams. Buddhist patriarchs alone, together with Buddhist patriarchs, possess hearing, action and experience which have enacted and which have perfectly realized mind here and now as Buddha. Buddhas have continued to pick up and to throw away hundreds of weeds, but they have never represented themselves as a 16-foot golden body. The immediate universe exists. It is not awaiting realization. It is not avoiding destruction. This concrete triple world exists. It is neither receding nor appearing, and it is not just mind. Mind exists as fences and walls. It never gets muddy or wet, and it is never artificially constructed. We realize in practice that mind here and now is Buddha. We realize in practice that mind which is Buddha is this. We realize in practice that Buddha actually is just the mind. We realize in practice that mind and Buddha here and now is right. And we realize in practice that this Buddha mind is here and now. Realization in practice like this is just mind here and now as Buddha, picking itself up and authentically transmitting itself to mind here and now as Buddha. Authentically transmitted like this, it has arrived at the present day. The mind that has been authentically transmitted means one mind as all dharmas and all dharmas as one mind. For this reason, a man of old said, "When a person becomes conscious of the mind, there is not an inch of soil on the earth." Remember, when we become conscious of the mind, the whole of the heaven falls down and the whole ground is torn apart. Or in other words, when we become conscious of the mind, the earth grows 3 inches thicker. An ancient patriarch said, "What is fine, pure and bright mind? It is mountains, rivers, and the earth, the sun, the moon, and the stars." Clearly, mind is mountains, rivers, and the earth, the sun, the moon, and the stars. But what these words say is, when we are moving forward, not enough, and when we are drawing back, too much. Mind as mountains, rivers, and the earth is nothing other than mountains, rivers, and the earth. There are no additional waves or surf, no wind or smoke. Mind as the sun, the moon, and the stars is nothing other than the sun, the moon, and the stars. There was no additional fog or mist. Mind as living and dying, coming and going, is nothing other than living and dying, coming and going. There is no additional delusion or realization. Mind as fences, walls, tiles, and pebbles is nothing other than fences, walls, tiles, and pebbles. There is no additional mud or water. Mind as the 4 elements and 5 aggregates is nothing other than 4 elements and 5 aggregates. There was no additional horse or monkey. Mind as a chair or a whisk is nothing other than a chair or a whisk. There is no additional bamboo or wood. Because the state is like this, mind here and now is Buddha, is untainted. Mind here and now is Buddha. All Buddhas are untainted Buddhas. This being so, mind here and now is Buddhas, is the Buddhas themselves, who establish the will, undergo training, realize Bodhi, and experience Nirvana. If we have never established the will, undergone training, realized Bodhi, and experienced Nirvana, then the state is not mind here and now is Buddha. If we establish the mind and do practice and experience, even in a single kasana, there is mind here and now is Buddha. If we establish the will and do practice and experience in a single molecule, this is mind here and now as Buddha. If we establish the will and do practice and experience in countless kalpas, this is mind here and now is Buddha. If we establish the will and do practice and experience in one instant of consciousness, this is mind here and now, is Buddha. If we establish the will and do practice and experience inside half a fist, this is mind here and now, is Buddha. To say, on the contrary, that undergoing training to become Buddha for long kalpas is not mind here and now, is Buddha, is never to have seen, never to have known, and never to have learned mind here and now is Buddha. It is never to have met a true teacher who proclaims mind here and now is Buddha. The term Buddhas means Shakyamuni Buddha. Shakyamuni Buddha is just mind here and now is Buddha. When all the Buddhas of past, present, and future become Buddha, they inevitably become Shakyamuni Buddha. That is, mind here and now is Buddha. Shōbōgenzō Soku Shinzi Butsu, preached to the assembly at Kanondori Kosho Horin-chi Temple in the Uji district of Yoshu on the 25th day of the 5th lunar month in the first year of Ino. Thank you.